Hello and welcome to Dinis Guarda YouTube podcast series, powered by openbusinesscouncil.org, citiesabc.com, and fashionabc.org. Once again, here we are to continue profiling fast innovation personalities around the world, and especially thought leaders that are trying to change the way we look at technology, authors and thinkers that actually can look at the more positive things that we have for humanity. I think there's a lot of noise if you look at the news or social media. Normally, it's always very negative, and I think in this channel, there's space more to look at the challenges and the opportunities, but at least to be more positive and actually have a better narrative. And that's, I think, especially nowadays, and we're talking in November 2022, it's actually a time that actually having a bit of common sense is actually very important, especially when it comes to some of the things we're going to be talking in this interview. So I welcome to our series Aurélien Onimus. That is a personality that I know for some time, and I'm quite proud about the work he's been doing in terms of writing and as well building his brand as an author, especially in France, where he's been publishing in very powerful books that I think they are mostly available for the French people, French-speaking people at least, or reading people, but I'm sure that he's going to go international as well. So Aurélien is still quite young, but is an author and writer. There's the CEO of samapps.com, and that has a portfolio of management, especially related with blockchain solutions and digital assets and digital currencies, and looks at precisely mechanics of gamification and different solutions to create narratives in different areas. This project and different areas that he's been working have been involved in different areas of entrepreneurship around startups and institutions related with blockchain. He's as well a professor, a guest lecturer and professor in the University of Paris, Panthéon-Sorbonne, and he has 3 books. I'll probably read it in French and then in English. La blockchain, une révolution dans l'immobilier, the 2020. And now there's this new book, which we're going to be talking today, that is Guide pratique de la blockchain en entreprise. So the first one, I'll translate it in English, is Blockchain Revolution in the Property. And the second one is Practical Guide to Blockchain for Enterprise, which I think it's more important than ever, because at the moment there's so much narratives, very confusing about this. And I think we're going to be talking on this interview about his work in France, about as well the different areas that he's been doing, and as well how the French community of developers look at blockchain, and as well the academic world as well, where Aurélien has been involved. So welcome to our series, Aurélien.
Thanks a lot, Dinis, for the huge introduction. Your French is quite good. I like it.
I have to practice. I'm
impressed.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Okay, so I think especially you're quite young, but you've been specialized in blockchain, and especially the area of blockchain entrepreneurship and blockchain as well, with the component of academic research, but as well practicalities, which I love. And I think your first book was about blockchain and enterprise, or blockchain and property, which is a key element, especially real estate. And a lot of the things when we talk about, of course, these areas, it comes back to crypto speculation and stupidities. So let's look at this. So let's first an introduction by you, your background, and as well as always interesting to see France, which part of my family is from, and as well what a background about how did you end up in blockchain, and as well being an entrepreneur, and as well being a writer and an author.
Okay, so I began entering into blockchain. I think it's quite interesting because it was at the end of my studies when I was at the Insect Business School. I chose to write my thesis around the blockchain industry. And I wrote a first book, which is Blockchain and ICOs. Where it was when the hype of ICOs happened, so initial coin offerings. And it was quite interesting. And finally, I launched my own consulting firm during around 3 years, advising several startups, but also institutions in developing blockchain use cases. And what happened finally is that I began to really think about launching my own product related to blockchain industry, and especially with crypto industry, which is, you told it earlier, synapse.com. which the main goal is to introduce innovation regarding the way people are seeing investment practices, make it fun, make it shareable, make it social. So that's more global, the most global vision of what I'm doing today here. And I'm the CEO and co-founder of this startup. We are really at an early stage, but we are iterating a lot, and we really believe that. I think if you authorize myself, I would like to give the vision I have regarding the blockchain, because I really think it's interesting. What I saw, so it's been like more than, I would say, 5 years. I am in the industry. I would say it's not the earlier. Some people were in since 2008, but I'm not. I fell in love later, but still, it's quite interesting to see that whatever is happening, initial coin offerings, NFTs, Web3, metaverse, and every stuff we are talking about, and every sadly, I would say crypto crashes or scams. A lot of things are happening, and I believe my vision is that every asset worldwide, whatever the type of asset, will have a digital representation in obviously the blockchain, but maybe in another technology in the coming years. But still, I truly believe that real estate, energy, but also supply chain, also I would say even my glass will have a digital representation and unique ID in this future world. And based upon this, I really think a lot of opportunities are here to help society to develop some more economics approaches regarding business, most of all.
So let's start just first. So you gave a bit of an overview about how you see blockchain, which I appreciate. But before that, so I think it's important for people listening to us, and of course, this is a YouTube tech channel, which we have quite technical topics that we've been discussing here. We always like to demystify, but I think, how did you come to this? Because I think I think the first thing is that a huge part of people listening to us get into these technologies mostly because they find some influencer or they find some kind of myth around crypto, and everyone gets some fascination. They will make some quick buck. And probably if you're younger, probably in the NFT revolution. If you are a bit older, probably you heard about all the Bitcoin, about the crypto, and you end up actually here. But in the end of the day, behind this, there's blockchain technology, which is the purpose of your work and a lot of the things you've been doing here. And like you said, digital assets. So how did you got into this, and what made you come and start working on this? Let's start with that question, more personal, before you go to the other one. And as well, your context with France education, because I will always like to look at this from a local versus global perspective.
Yeah, of course. I would say how I came up to this approach. I think there were several signals regarding the approach of technology. We have seen several evolution regarding tech stuffs, and I think one main innovation, one main point that was currently creating problems in the current state of the economy was obviously the financial point. There is a lot of flows in this industry, and which made me come in this industry is that I had the feeling crypto, but most of all the technology behind crypto, represented the future of our society. And it was really that point, that main point, that made me think, okay, there is something to do. Everything is going, every digital stuff is going to be global. There is a mass adoption of the internet worldwide. And it looks to me that it's the natural evolution of what internet will look like in several years. And that's finally how I came up, by passion, obviously, but still, I think also that there is a question of timing. And I think now we are seeing a huge evolution of the way people perceive value of the data you share, the data you own in the internet. And finally, what is interesting with blockchain is that you are the owner of your data, and you can sell it, you can create it, and you can resell it. You have a real data management, and I would say also an individual data management for yourself. You can store your own money and don't be, I would say, subject to banks, bankruptcy or other things. So I think it's a more global vision. There is a tech aspect, there is also a social aspect, and most of all a philosophical aspect, which is quite interesting, saying that finally today we are in a world where companies are really are in a situation where they own all the data and you cannot manage it. If you take a look at Google search and so on, they manage more than 90% of the research on the internet. And I truly believe that it cannot stay like this. We have to give people the power of their data. So that's the main point. I would say the three main points: the tech aspect, the social aspect, and the most of all the aspect linked to the financial monopolistic position.
Interesting, and I completely agree with what you said. So let's look right now in terms of your company. So before we start talking about the books and the different areas that you've been researching. So I always like to talk about companies and entrepreneurs, and I know that you're quite young, you just started recently, but tell us about what you've been doing, and as well the context of your work in France, and the challenge, and as well the good success, if there's any case study you want to highlight.
Yeah, so the first thing came up finally with the book on the real estate. The idea came up with this. I had the feeling there was something to do, that there was something to do in the blockchain industry regarding especially real estate, because blockchain allow to certify information, to transfer the information, to execute contract. I would say in a completely secure environment, and that's how I thought there was a work to do in the real estate industry. I wrote this book, and I found out, especially in France, so you will find it maybe interesting, that in France, especially, I think the real estate use cases in blockchain will take some time to happen, really. And I was thinking about something really interesting. It was at the beginning a go-to-market strategy for this real estate tokenization platform I wanted to create. And finally, this go-to-market strategy transformed into the complete company. We were thinking that the visual aspect today is quite important in the way people see investment, meaning that today you only have curves and numbers to manage your investment, and it's not social. You cannot share it. You don't have this kind of customization related to your investment. It's only numbers. And finally, people are a lot thinking that, okay, it's only investment is only dedicated to experts, which is not true. And what we want to create, what we want to make with Synapse, we want to make investment fun, and we want to democratize investment really by using data visualization. And the most simple but yet most tangible way of doing it is to say that your investments, your curves, your number will be represented by a city. So we are creating, I like to say it, we are creating the crypto sim city for investors. I like to say it, and it's really a vision of how you can finally have social interaction. We found out investors, when they want to invest in cryptos, they really have a willing of joining a community, finding reinsurance. You talk about influencers. They are looking for influencers. They really are looking for expertise. And most of all, they want to know they are a part of a project. They want to show they are a part of a project. And that's how came up this whole idea. We believe that finally, as we believe every asset will be digitized, and in the same time, we believe that the most digitized asset today is cryptocurrency. We think that the best way to make it tangible is to show a city. And finally, today it's crypto, but maybe tomorrow we will try to be a kind of plug and play platform for all investment platforms that are digitizing several assets, real estate, energy, and so on. That's the main vision we have. And that's how we are seeing and how came up the idea. We obviously talked to a lot of people investing in cryptos. And I think we maybe have something quite interesting. We'll see on the next steps, but still we have good signals regarding this vision. One last thing regarding the evolution of the project in the French ecosystem, in the French ecosystem. I truly believe now a lot of innovations in France are coming from, most of all, you have Paris, which is centralizing a lot of things. But what is quite interesting regarding blockchain is that we are seeing emerging companies in other regions of France, such as in the south, where I'm based too. And I think it's quite interesting, the fact that it's not only polarized by one place. And another thing I would like to say is that it's more related to I would say, legal aspects. And maybe you will have questions regarding this, but some people are yelling at France and Europe in general that there is too much legal constraints. But my opinion is that if there is legal implementation, if a lot of government are working on introducing legislations, legal frames, it's a good thing, because I really believe that it helps structuring the crypto industry, the blockchain industry in the whole Europe. So that's my belief. And I really think that there is a huge, I think France took the lead in Europe, really, that's my belief, especially with the work of the Autorité des marchés financiers. I think it's the equivalent in UK, I don't know it, but it's the US equivalent is the SEC, Security Exchange Commission. They work a lot, the AMF, Autorité des marchés financiers, worked a lot to really improve jurisdiction, legal aspects, and to give a global framework for all European companies. And that's why there are a new legislation regulation is emerging now. It's called the MiCA, Marketing Crypto Assets, which will help also structure a lot the Europe environment, even though a lot of people are yelling at it, as I was saying.
No, that's a bold statement, and I think it would be great that they succeed. So I think definitely probably France and the UK are leading at least the narrative. But the UK has been very slow in terms of regulation, and actually it's been probably losing territory. But I think probably in terms of Europe, yeah, definitely, because then we have, of course, a lot of things happening all over Europe, but really not from a governmental perspective. And the European Union has some legislation, but it's very weak. And actually, I don't think there's any follow-up. There's kind of studies and research that comes out. So let's talk right now, before we go to your books, in terms of your experience with the blockchain community in France. So what has been your experience? Because of course you're there, you wrote 2 books on the area. What are the things that you, and I saw as well in the book, you have quite influential personalities in France as well involved. What are the areas that you saw so far? You saw really a lot of interest, a lot of, because the numbers of people really, for example, at the moment, the global numbers of crypto in as of November 2022 is around less than 350 million people using crypto. And in Europe, France is not leading at all. So that means it's actually, but from a regulatory perspective and from an innovation perspective, there's a lot of things happening. But I would like to hear your views, being there and as well being studying in one of the top universities in France. Actually, the top, Sorbonne is the top university of France.
Yes. What I saw, I wrote the book during, I would say it was, I began writing the book in January at the beginning of this year. And I think the timing is quite important, because at this point, at this time, I saw a lot of companies working on GameFi, working a lot on creating crypto games, creating play to earn, creating video games that finally allow you to gain cryptocurrency. I saw a lot of companies doing this, because I think there was a lot of hype regarding NFTs and stuff like that. But also, I saw also another type of companies, which is also quite interesting, especially regarding blockchain applications. And I really observed this also earlier when we saw another bear market several years ago. Nowadays, I can see a lot of people are more focusing on real estate use cases once again. And I think it's quite interesting what is happening currently in France. I don't know for the rest of the world, but it's quite interesting when we are facing a bear market in France. The French reflex, the French signals is to say, okay, now crypto is not so bullish. So we'll talk more about blockchain companies for real estate application. And I don't know if you know it, Dinis, but the number one investment for French people is real estate. So I think it's quite interesting because people are searching for crypto use cases or blockchain use cases in real estate to find reinsurance regarding the industry. And that's one main point I think is quite interesting. And what I saw also is that it really happens, I would say, several months ago, and not previous years. I see more and more companies launching kind of incubator, accelerator dedicated to Web3, to crypto industry, blockchain industries, which are French currently. I think it's quite interesting because I think it shows a proof of the industry is trying to mature, initiated by private actors, which is quite important too. And I think you know it also, but in France, there is a lot of weight regarding the public actions. And we can see that actors like BPI France are talking a lot about more and more about metaverse and several stuff like that. But as you know, French people are not the riskier people. It takes time. They think that new is risk, whereas in the US or maybe in the UK, new is an opportunity. So it takes time. But I really believe that we can see, I would say, yeah, the industry is really maturing, and that's my signals. That's what I saw mainly. And in the project I interview in this book, I really saw a huge belief in the tech, huge works. A lot of people I interview were really determined in working in the industry. It was not a feeling of we will just surf on the hype. Now they are still working every project I interviewed several months ago, so I think it's a good signals. And finally, also one company, I talked to one of the responsible of this company, which is Ledger. I think you know about Ledger, which is a hardware wallet. And I think this company is quite interesting. They're very good at an international scale. And I really believe that this is one of the companies that will really become a major worldwide. I really believe it. And yeah, I think that's it. But yeah, French industry, I think, is quite maturing. That's my whole point, I would say.
It's interesting, and you're right. Actually, been involved. Of course, you have Stephen Tuel, is French, and he was the first guy that created actually the first. Which I know quite well. I know I didn't speak with him for ages. But for instance, it was actually the first DAO, the DAO, and it was the first CMO of Ethereum. So let's look right now in terms of your books, and I think we have limited time. So in terms of your books, so your first book was Precise Blockchain and Property or Real Estate in the translation, and your second is Blockchain Enterprise. So let's go through both because these are super important topics. So let's go again with your definition of blockchain, because I think you're quite technical. I like your books. I know that most of our audience is English speaking, but they're very interesting because you go very technical, but as well there's a lot of research here that is very practical and very interesting in terms of the way you put things forward. So let's look right now in terms of first the areas of blockchain and property. Well, first of all, blockchain, you did a bit of definition, and then now you put blockchain and property, and then we go to blockchain enterprise, which is much bigger.
So literally, I always like to say it, literally blockchain is, you can, I would say, dismember this word. You have the block, you have the chain, you're just creating blocks which register several transactions, and every time a block finally is complete, you can validate the transaction and introduce it into a chain, which is secured, certified, and so on. So I would say it's the most simplified definition of blockchain I would give, but also that finally you can share data, whatever the type of data, financial, but also contractual, but also certificates, but also finally what we can say is that tangible asset, but also intangible asset. You can share it, certify it, and finally prove the ownership of whatever type of assets. So I think it's my vision of blockchain, how I would define it. And also what is interesting, because we talk a lot about Web3, and I like to say it, and I think it's quite important. To my mind, Web3 couldn't exist without blockchain. And also, I think that even the metaverse aspect is quite interesting with blockchain approaches. I don't really believe in metaverse without Web3, without blockchain approaches. And yeah, I would say that's it. So to my mind, finally, blockchain is really emerged. It's more than a revolution. A lot of people talked about revolution. It's more an evolution. A lot of people are saying, whoa, Bitcoin emerged. It's only a technology which has 15 years. It's completely false. This technology has more than 60 years of existence. We saw first approaches, first experience, first scientific approaches in 1971 from IBM, for example, and we have even earlier approaches. So I really think people misunderstand the fact that blockchain is not quite a new technology. But now it is really a question of timing. I told you earlier. I really think the timing is very good to develop use cases in this industry, and especially talking about real estate. I think one thing which is important with real estate, one thing which is quite interesting, is the fact that you can, I told it earlier, digitize assets, meaning that you can create a unique idea for whatever type of building, a house, a building, and so on. You can create a unique idea of it, digital identity, finally, and say, okay, someone will buy it. Someone will buy it entirely, but someone can buy it also with, I would say, by fractions, meaning that he will have a fractional ownership of the building, meaning that he can buy it and tomorrow sell it very easily, which is completely the contrary of what you can see today in the real estate industry, which is quite illiquid. As I said, it's quite interesting the fact that people can really digitize assets, company can digitize assets. And I think there is something really interesting with the fact that people can now access properties with finally a low amount of money. And I think it's one of the key innovations of the blockchain in real estate. Also, what you can see is that it's more contractual aspect, but you can also create, using technology, for example, use a blockchain, for example, Ethereum, you can use a smart contract to finally automate transaction for real estate renting. And I think it's quite interesting too. So we have several use cases, I think, which are quite interesting. And I think also what is also interesting in the real estate, yeah, I think that's it. That's the main issue. That's the main problem I see. I can see you can resolve using blockchain, especially regarding investment. And you have also, I would say, one last thing, Dinis, because I'm thinking about it, is that in the real estate transaction, you have a lot of intermediaries, meaning that you have a lot of information, and sometimes you don't know who intervene at which step of the process. And you can also think that finally all of these actors could use a common blockchain-based process, which will allow every person to certify a step that is really related to his expertise or his finally involvement in the project, whatever type of it of the project. And I think that's it. All I see in real estate for the moment.
No, and I think this is a good one to go. So about your book. So what were the book? Or was it a reception of the first book about the main book that you did about the real estate? So there's any case studies that you want to highlight that you found that are interesting? Because I think one of the things that is interesting for people listening to us is what are the things we can use, anything that can be used, and as well how it works.
One main use case was I saw two use cases related to investment. You have Realty. I don't know if you know this company, which is quite interesting. It's a French company currently operating in the US for the moment. I think it's mostly due to a regulations aspect for the moment, but they will come into Europe. I really believe it. But it's quite interesting because they allow people to invest in real estate, beginning at around $50 in cryptos. People buy their crypto, the real token, and they can invest in a house based on Detroit, for example, in the US. And also, you have also one use cases which is more European one, They do not use crypto to pay for payments, but they use blockchain. It's EquiSafe, which is a company that allow finally companies to digitize real estate assets and create and to divide some real estate building and to sell it for $100, for example, sell several fraction of the building for $100. And I think that's the main companies I saw. I obviously saw, and I talked to you several years ago. I talked about obviously Cities ABC, which is quite interesting, related to the fact of digitizing assets of the city and creating a digital ID for each city. And I think, related to investment, I think it's the main use cases. You have also, I think that's it. The main companies. If I could give you some other name, you have Simon, another company which is quite interesting for especially people that are managing several buildings for other companies. It allows to vote for, I would say, renovation works, for other stuff related to the common social life of I would say renters or buyers of apartments. They're allowed to vote in the blockchain for having a decentralized certified vote. That's it. I think it's the main example I can see using blockchain in France. That's it.
Interesting case studies. I think there's a couple of very important things that are happening on that area. That's, like you said, I think the blockchain technology brings a huge amount of capacities for creating, especially the idea of certification and solidifying the industry, which is one of the biggest industries. We're talking about $5 trillion industry. So in terms of your last book, the practical guide of blockchain in enterprise. So can you highlight some of the things you have here on the subtitle? Of course, cryptocurrencies, NFT, Web3, infrastructure, and all the different areas. So if you can actually highlight the book, because it's quite fresh, so I always like to highlight.
Okay, you want me to discuss about the book or give a definition of each?
Let's start first for the book, and then we can go through this areas.
Okay, no problem. So the book is mainly talking about practical use cases for blockchain, especially for companies. I would say there are two types of companies I am targeting with this book. The first one, which is already a tech company, which wants just to gain a certain level of expertise regarding this area. And the second one is the type of companies that want to enter this industry but don't know how. And mainly in this book, I talk about several use cases for these two different types of companies. I also want to give some tips, some advices for venture capital that want to invest also in companies, because we have seen a lot of scams regarding especially tokenomics and stuff like that. And really, I want to give some tips, some advices to analyze, to describe a project, but also to develop a project. I also like to remember in this book, and I think it's also one of the main key points, that a blockchain project is still, first of all, a project, meaning that there is no use to create a blockchain if there is not a real problem to find and to solve. And that's really the main point I want to highlight, because a lot of people are surfing in the hype. And I really think the industry will only mature if people are focusing on the real problem-solving solution using blockchain. So the main point is really to describe the blockchain, describe several use cases in different industries. Really, I talk about gaming, I talk about digital art, I talk about supply chain, I talk about luxury industry, real estate, obviously, and finally, how to launch it, why to launch it, what are the key points to have in mind. I also gave my own approach, I would say, of the Lean Canvas Strategizer made by Strategizer. I created, I would say, the blockchain Lean Canvas for companies to really have the specific insights of launching for launching a company in the Web3 industry. And I think, that's it. Finally, if you understood blockchain, if you know use cases, I give you practical advices to develop it, and finally some techniques to analyze several blockchain projects.
So let's look at some of these, and I think we are finishing because of your time limitation. But for instance, you have here in terms of the structure of the book. So one of the areas that's particularly interesting is how to generate new economical model ecosystems. I think that's one thing I would like to touch. How do you think this can, especially for companies that have no clue? And I think every company is right now a tech company, so it's a particularly important topic.
Yeah, it's really an important topic, obviously. To tell you the truth, I talked about this title. I wanted the term ecosystem. My editor wanted me to tell, why don't you talk about business model? I explained it to him. It's more like an ecosystem. Why? Because now when you create a Web3 project, you have 2 points which are quite different. For the classical project, I would say you have the product, the service you want to sell, you build value around it, and you say, okay, there is traction, there is no traction, but still you are building value around the product. But now you have also another aspect, which is linked to if you are creating, obviously, some digital asset related, like NFTs or cryptos, it's impossible to imagine your project only as a product, because what you're creating is a crypto or NFTs, meaning that you are creating an ecosystem, and meaning that you have to manage all the stuff related to economic approaches, but also manage all the stuff related to the product approaches. And finally, one main point, which is the most important one, is that you have to create a community that may feel sufficiently involved to contribute to the project. To also, they want also one thing, they want also to gain money regarding the project, maybe to earn stuff. I would say the whole giveaway part took a quite higher level in Web3. So you have to create a community, a huge engagement, and it's all about finally a global ecosystem, because Web3 blockchain is finally an open source technology, which allow obviously secure, transform information and so on. I told it a lot, but you need developers to be involved, meaning that if tomorrow you want to create a blockchain, an infrastructure blockchain, you want developers to contribute for the project. You want them to give reward for contributing, for making the blockchain evolving. So I think it's the main point also, which is quite important to understand. Finally, you cannot imagine a blockchain project, a crypto project, NFT project, play to earn, whatever. You cannot imagine doing it without a huge community involvement and enthusiasm. That's it. That's really my vision. And I really think it's the main difference between a Web2 project and a Web3.
So the last part of your book, which is particularly important, is one thing that I like particularly is the synergies between blockchain and other technologies. And you mentioned actually the BIM model, so which is a particularly interesting one. So for people that don't know what is the BIM model, I'm sure you're going to explain, but I think it's just important to contextualize. This technology don't work on its own. So there's a lot of models that work together. So in the end of the day, the BIM model is building information modeling, and everything is about information modeling that we have in our society. So I want to go how you look at these areas and how you take it forward on these different directions. Yeah.
Okay. So I really think, so we are talking about building information modeling, the BIM, because we think, and I would say a whole part of the industry really believe that it will be the real estate of tomorrow. It's really related to all kind of stuff I talked about at the beginning of our talks. I said my vision is that every asset will be digitized, and I said also maybe it will be blockchain only, but maybe sometimes you will see other technologies, synergies, and so on. And that's exactly the main example, meaning that BIM is really a way of representing buildings for especially technical aspects, for people working on the building, for people that want to manage the whole building life, I would say from the conception phase to the phase where in 200 years, you will have to make some renovation of every floor of the building. And that's really one technology that will also where you will see also synergies, and I come up with this now. As with blockchain, you can certify information. You can imagine one thing with BIM. You can say that an architect is working on a specific building, And what is happening most of the time is that you have the architect working on a building and he's sending his plans regarding the building. And finally, he's waiting for the owner approval and several steps before receiving payment. But also he's waiting also for maybe other technical contributors that want to ask questions, that want to precise several stuff regarding the plans and so on. What we can imagine with blockchain is that finally every stage of the conception of the building can be validated through blockchain, meaning that every time several intermediaries certify that a step has been validated, the architect could receive, for example, a payment automatically using smart contract. And you have also one use case which is interesting. There is a huge challenge regarding intellectual properties in the real estate industry. When an architect is making something, he wants to show he is the creator of the whole design thing. Inscribing this design in the blockchain in several ways could help managing the whole copy-paste, I would say, architect problem they are facing every time. So I think, yeah, most of all, whatever it is, the BIM help modelizing stuff really technically, really precisely. The blockchain creates synergies for creating more fluidity in the process, but also more transparency, more security. So I really think there is a huge combination. And if you are talking a lot more of also Internet of Things, if you're talking about this, you can say that finally the interaction between the object, the smart connected object, could be secured also using blockchain because the server is decentralized. You can see and you can see a lot and more, more and more, I would say, cyber attacks are coming to smart connected devices, and it's really interesting to use blockchain to secure the whole thing.
Completely. That is, I think, probably the most important thing is how we put all of this cycle together. I know that you have limited time, and I passed already your time. So thank you so much, Aurélien, for the year. I think probably come back again, probably in a live between all these different things and talking about case studies between France and different parts of the world. So good luck for this book. For people listening to us, at least the French ones, you can find it all over France. For not, we'll put information here about Aurélien, about the book, and about his thesis. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Dinis. Thanks a lot, Ray.